In this week's episode of the 1040 podcast, we sit down with David O'Donoghue, a former Irish Guard that made the move to the Western Australian Police Force. We discuss David's career choices and the move to Australia. David's also a PT and nutritional coach, so maybe you might need some help on that sort of things. You can reach out to David directly. Yeah, here we go.
So today I'm joined by David O'Donoghue, who is a former guard, a fitness coach, and now part of the Western Australian Police Force. So thanks for joining us today, David. Much appreciated.
All right, cheers, Connor. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Well, look, going back to the very start, right, what was it like in school for you? Like, did you know you always kind of wanted to be in the guards, or did you know what you wanted to do?
Funnily enough, like when I did join the guards, I remember my grandmother saying to me, she's like, "Oh, when you were a kid, you always wanted to be in the police or the army." And like going back, I suppose, to childhood memories, I do have like a recollection of going up to the army barracks in Cork Collins Barracks with my granddad and looking at like the tanks and the weapons and all that. And I kind of had just a natural interest in it from a kid. And of course, when I was growing up, it was all like John Rambo, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all those action movies. And you're just like looking on the screen, these big, like vascular men, like doing all these things, commando stuff. And it's like, oh, that seems pretty cool. So it was kind of always there, like growing up, that kind of flair was just that interest, I suppose, the adrenaline and action, I suppose, was the best way of putting it.
Okay. And in school then, how did you get on? Like, were you like academic, or were you just kind of like an average kind of student?
Probably would say I was a decent student, got good grades, had aspirations to do well in life from being a young age. I mean, obviously there was the weekends with the friends and hanging around, and I kept my nose clean, never got in trouble, clean slate. Just got through school really and just kept the head down. Did transition year. A lot of people went to different schools because in my school you couldn't skip it. But yeah, I just kind of embraced it and just make sure that I got good grades and could get a good course when I came to the Leaving Cert and get good points out of that.
Yeah. If you had to go back, would you still do transition year? Would you recommend it, or?
If there was an option there to skip it, I probably would have skipped it.
Okay.
I just found it was just a bit of a waste of a year. There wasn't a whole lot of stuff done academically. It was kind of like easing into like the whole Leaving Cert curriculum. You did like other kind of subjects from what I recall. Like there was a bit more time given to like physical activity and that kind of stuff. But yeah, personally, if I could have skipped it, I would. But we didn't have it. We didn't have that option in my school.
Okay. And then after school, then you went to third level education straight away, and you done business information systems.
Yeah, so I followed the curve like everyone else. Back then, it was kind of like, oh, what are you going to do in college? Like, what degree? Like, there was no talks of like, are you like who isn't going to college? It was kind of like everyone was going to college, no matter where they're going, whether it was UCC or CIT or different part of the country or even abroad, for example. And then when I was going through like fifth and sixth year in school, and I spent a lot of time with the career guidance because I literally had no idea what I actually wanted to do. And it was just kind of pushed onto you like, oh, after school, you go to college, you get a degree and you get a job, and that's how it should be kind of thing. So I was like, right, if I'm going to do that, like, what am I going to do? What's my interest? So I spent so much time with the career guidance counselor and just trying to figure out what was going to kind of be something that I would be interested in. And I suppose in school, I did have business organization as one of my optional subjects. So I was like, right, I like business. And I grew up in like a background of a family retail business. So I had that ethic behind me anyway. And then growing up as a kid, I had like an interest in tech and computers and gaming. And I remember as a kid making fake viruses and sending them through friends on MSN. So I was like, right, I do like some tech stuff. So the career guidance counselor was like trying to put me in a direction of business information systems as a mix of the two of them. So that's probably something that would be good for you. So I was like, right, looked at it, looked up the curriculum, the prospectus, what kind of modules we're covering. I was like, yeah, like it's not too tech heavy like computer science, and it's not too business heavy either. It's kind of nice balance between the two of them. And then I suppose what even drew me more was the third year placement and the opportunity to go to America or even over to the UK. And then the long-term career prospects coming out of that course. And I was like, right, it's a no-brainer for me. I think at the time when I applied, it was about 380 points. And I think now it's up in the high 400s because the demand for the course has exponentially grown over the years, literally because of those opportunities from it.
Yeah. And is that when you first is that how you got your job then in Fidelity? I think it was where you interned for a while.
Yeah, so I interned in Fidelity in my third year placement, and I was delighted with that because it was like one of the more respected companies that came in to hire interns. And then, of course, they hired, I think for my year, they took on about 20 of us. And I remember two of us were going to North Carolina. I remember I was doing nightclub security at the time, and one of the lads goes, he was like, you're going to North Carolina with John Sucker, we're all going to Boston. And I was like, oh, where the hell is North Carolina? Like, and why is there only two of us going? What's going on here? So I remember like straight home looking up on the map, where's North Carolina and Fidelity, and I was like, what's this going to be like now? Just the two of us, like, and all the crack is going to be in Boston and the Irish community and whatnot. But no, I went over, and like the best 6 months I ever had was over there. Like North Carolina, absolutely beautiful part of America, lovely people, very cheap cost of living. Pay was really good. Like in terms of an intern, we were getting $800 a week.
Okay, yeah, it's not
So,
bad.
like we were living like kings over there. And to put into perspective, like people in my class stayed in like Ireland who went to like companies in Cork and Dublin were barely even getting half of that. And I remember they were just looking on our social media all the time, like so envious that they didn't try and go abroad, and just have that opportunity. But when I look back at those 6 months in America, like the best memories I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like,
And was that like on a J1 kind of thing, or what did they sponsor
yeah,
you separately?
it's in theory it's a J1 visa. They didn't really have any prospects of offering you a job after you graduated because of the whole visa situation in the States.
Okay.
So when I asked about that, because I was like, I loved America when I went over, I was like, bro, I'd love to be back here. Great part of America. I love the lifestyle, the people, everything. And I was kind of told, well, you can come back, we'll offer you a job, but you have to get a visa yourself. And at the time, I was like, oh, well, I don't even know how I go about getting a visa. And I kind of parked it. I remember a couple of years later, one or two of the lads in my class who went to companies up in New York, they ended up going back after they graduated. Like, I was like, how did you go with the visa stuff? And they're like, oh, we just got a graduate visa. And then they sponsored them. And I was like, oh, missed opportunity. I never thought about that. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you missed out. And then after you graduated college, then is that when you kind of made the decision to join the Guards, or did you have other jobs then in between?
No, so out of BIS, I got hired by Accenture in Dublin
Okay.
for a tech consulting analyst. And like when I remember when I got that job, like I was pretty proud, like because I was like I heard of Accenture, a big multinational tech company, for consulting, and I had friends in like in other courses going off to like PwC and EY and KPMG, and Accenture was like part of this whole like group of massive companies.
Right.
So I was like, oh yeah, I'm off to be a corporate job and wearing the suits and all that. So yeah, I kind of went with the flow, moved up to Dublin, started in corporate job, kind of Monday to Friday gig, learning the ropes of an analyst, using some skills obviously from BIS. There wasn't really tech; it was all analyst roles, very high level, meeting obviously with the stakeholders that we were contracted out to, and then working with dev teams over in Italy and India. And it was good. I mean, corporate life, it was nice lifestyle. You know, you go work dinners, everything paid for, very good social events,
Yeah.
work hard, play hard ethic, and very good prospects in terms of promotion. And you had a clear kind of like in 2 years, you're going to be a consultant. Within 3 years after that, you'll be a manager. Within 2 to 3 years after that, you'll be a senior manager. And you kind of had an idea where the ladder was going.
Okay.
And I did it for almost 2 years. And I remember one day I just kind of sat back in the office, kind of like thinking, is this for me long term? And
Right.
kind of looking at my manager and my senior manager and seeing what they were doing, and kind of like, right, do I see myself here long term? Do I see myself in their roles in a couple of years? And I just, I just said, I just don't think this is for me.
No way.
I just think this, as nice as it is, no, salary wasn't bad as an analyst. I mean, I think it was on 31K
Yeah.
at the time. And, I mean, it was entry level graduate pay. It wasn't, you weren't going to be rich, you weren't going to be poor. And obviously the salary prospects as you go up through the ladder was quite generous, and all the other perks that came with it, like your health insurance paid for. So it had its benefits. But I just think the Monday to Friday gig in an office role at that time, I just wanted to have a bit more of difference. And I suppose thinking back then when I was a kid, the aspirations of doing something in the military or law enforcement was still there. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch, and
Yeah.
I had to scratch interested in some way. And I remember I said, right, the guards weren't recruiting at the time. So I was like, what can I do? So I looked at a military aspect, and I looked at the Irish Defence Forces, and I was kind of like, yeah, seems okay, but I think maybe there's something else. Remember, my dad years ago had a guy working for him, and he did time in the French Foreign Legion. So I looked at that, and that kind of scared me a bit because it was a 4-year conscription, and
Yeah.
you know, you hear
Looking
all
at that
kinds of
one.
stuff about the French Foreign Legion. So I was like, right, that's probably a bit more on the extreme side. So then the next step was I looked at the UK military, and I was kind of like looking for an elite and really pushing myself because I was always had that kind of aspiration to push myself no matter what I did. So I ended up applying for the Royal Marines and went through the recruitment process for that. So I was up and down to Belfast, preparing for that. I mean, looking back in corporate life, I was a bit of a lazy sod. You know, I went to the gym, but cardiovascular wise, I had no fitness whatsoever. Thought I was eating right, like I did through college, loads of chicken and pasta and chicken and rice and whatnot. And I remember I did one of the fitness tests with the Royal Marines, and they came out and they said, you just about scraped past that. You're going to have to pull up your socks before you go to the pre-joining test in the UK. And I was like, oh, you're like that. I think they gave me like 12 weeks or something to prepare. So I was like, right, game face on. I remember I was on pure hell for leather. I ended up shaving my head. I joined a triathlon club. I was training 7 days a week. And I remember I was at my leanest probably in that whole period. I remember going back to Cork and people were looking at me going like, what happened? You like, and like my face sunk in, my jawline was coming out, like abs out, and the fittest I ever was. I mean, like with the triathlon club alone, we were doing 150, 200 kilometer cycles every weekend, and I was in the gym 4 or 5 days a week on top of that with pretty much one recovery day if I was lucky, because I had in the back of my head,
Yes.
right, I need to make a cut here at the Royal Marines and I really have to push it. So long story short, kept pushing it and came back from a holiday, and my knee just didn't feel right and it was kind of sore. And I was like, right, this has kind of been going on for a while. I should get it checked. And I got an MRI done on it, and I had to tear my patellar tendon. So I was like, right, recovery time for this is about 12 months. So ended up sidelining me from the Royal Marines, and I was rehabbing it back home. Of course, by this stage, I had left Accenture. I hadn't been smart about it in terms of waiting until I get something else. I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go all in. I jacked the job. So I went back to Cork, went back working in the family business, doing nightclub security and just rehabbing my knee. And then, of course, the Garda recruitment opened, and I was like, right, you know, this might be just a blessing in disguise. Through the application, and just went through the whole process for that.
Okay. And do you know, like going back in school, like did you play sports or like were you athletic back in school, or did you play
I
or
suppose
football?
you could probably say I was like trying to fit in and try different things. So I never
Okay.
truly felt like I was kind of like, well, what am I going to be? What am I going to do athletic wise? I want to be fit. Growing up, I was quite a skinny person. I mean, I played rugby underage from under 13s up to under 18s. And I remember the lads were like, they used to call me Latino Eat, and instead of Latino Heat, there was a wrestler because I was so skinny and I was a winger. And so I obviously had,
Yeah.
the athleticism with the speed. And at the time I was a sprinter as well. I did the 60, 100 meter and 400, but not a pick on me. Looking back at pictures, like even as a kid, like I was just scrawny like nothing on me.
Jesus.
So yeah, I tried loads of sport. I was on a swim team as a kid. Did karate, got a black belt when I was 13. Thought I was a little karate kid. Again, watching Mr. Miyagi and all those movies, like, and I kind of all kind of intertwined, like the Rambos, the Karate Kids. I was like, I want to be this kind of
Yeah.
person, like want to be action packed. Did jujitsu as well, did a bit of Thai boxing. So I was always trying something different and where I fit it in. I suppose started in the gym when I was back in secondary school. I remember I used to sneak up after school, and PT teacher came in one day and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I thought it was okay." And he was like, "Look, tell no one. I just hope you know what you're doing." And sure, at the time I was reading all like the Flex and the Muscle and Fitness magazines. They were the thing,
Okay.
and bodybuilding.com. So yeah, the gym has always been there, I think, from a very young age, and obviously in between, try different sports, different martial arts, and that kind of thing.
Okay, fair enough. And then the process to get into the guards, then were you waiting long before you got in when you first applied, or what happened, or how long did it take you
Um,
to get in?
I think I applied late 2017, and or was it early to mid 2017? I applied, and then I got in January 2018. So wasn't that long, but that was the first recruitment they'd opened up, I think, since
That was after the
was it
recession kind of thing.
yeah, it was around 2010, 2011. So it was a number of years. So they had a ton of applicants. Um, Funnily enough, actually, the first time I applied, I got to the second round aptitude test in Dublin, and I actually failed that, so I was out of it. But they literally were recruiting nonstop, so I just reapplied and got back in. And then, of course, I knew what to expect the second time round. So after
Yeah.
that, it was just a smooth sailing process.
And you know the aptitude test? Did you like pay an external company to do like a mock aptitude test before you done it? No, you just went straight in.
I just went straight in. Like it's just your typical aptitude tests. You can do them online. The only difference was they asked you like job related questions. Like you're out on the beat and someone throws a bottle in your direction. What do you kind of do? And obviously you don't have any policing experience. You don't know what the job is like, so you kind of have to take a bit of a common sense approach. And it was all like it was blatantly obvious what the approach should be. Like one of them was like you run up and you arrest them, or you punch them, or you take a step back and you look for backup and you reassess it and all that. So
Right.
they were kind of tricky, but you just had to be like fairly screwed on when the questions came up to make sure you picked the right one.
Okay. Yeah. So, and how long does that kind of aptitude test take to sit? Is it like an hour? Do you do it online, or do you go to a classroom to do it, or how does it work?
So back when I did it, it might have changed now. But back then, you did your initial application online. Then they sent out the aptitude test. You did it at home on your own, and then you
Okay.
repeated it in person up in the Public Appointment Service office inside in Dublin city centre. I can't remember the name of the street of it now. He did that, and then they basically compared your two results, and obviously making sure people weren't doing it for them at home and that they were actually doing it themselves. So I'd say they might have done a bit of a process of elimination on applicants doing that.
Does there many people? I don't know if you know, but does many people fail like when they go and do the second? It's the exact same like when you go and do it in person.
Yeah, pretty much the exact same, because again they were just probably looking to compare like for like, making sure that there wasn't too much of a deviance from the first time to the second time.
Okay.
Then after the aptitude test, there was the interview. So I actually got recommended someone in Tipperary, just outside Templemore. Actually, she was doing like a Garda prep. So I kind of prepped interview questions myself.
Okay.
Went up to her, and she just does a mock interview with you,
Right.
and then she kind of advises you on what you should change or what I should say here and there. And I did it, and of course I was nervous, like, oh my God, is this what it's going to be like? And I did it, and she's like, no. She goes, you should have no issues. You answered perfectly using the correct format and all that. So I was like, okay, I should be all right. Went up to the interview in Dublin, and there was like 4 people I think in the room. They had like an inspector, 2 people from the civil service, and then they had 1 independent person just for oversight.
Okay.
And yeah, very similar questions. That was done. Then the interview completed. After that, then you met with your local superintendent. I think that was either before or after the interview. You met the superintendent, and they were basically like, "Why do you want to join the job? And are you sure this is what you want?" And of course, they asked the famous question to everyone. You can be sent anywhere in Ireland. How do you feel about that? And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. There's no problem. I'll go anywhere."
Where did you end up? You ended up in Dublin then, did you?
Yeah, at the time, when we were coming out of Templemore, like we were looking at all the phases ahead of us, and there was kind of like a trend. Like if you were from Munster, for example, you got somewhere in Munster. You might not have got your county, but you got somewhere within reason. So you're like, okay, like from Cork, maybe I'll get like Tip or Waterford. Be lucky if I got Cork, which would be great. Obviously close to home and everything.
Yeah.
And just before we came out, it was all about like the discussions on the hard border up the north, and where's it coming with Brexit and all this, and what's going to happen. And
Okay.
there was a bit of element of panic. And of course, Drew Harris was commissioner at the time, and he obviously was well aware of what was going on in Northern Ireland. So he made a hardline decision. He said, everyone from our intake, you're either going to the border counties, and if you're not going to the border counties, you're going to Dublin, and that's it. So remember, they called us into like one of the lecture theatres in Templemore to tell us this the week before we graduated, and it was, you just heard people crying. People had like their head in their hands, and it was just total distraught. And I was like, oh my God, we're going back to Dublin. Like when I left Accenture, I was like hoping not to go back to Dublin again. And here I am, probably going to go back to either Dublin or I'm off up to
Yeah.
north, and God, where I'll end up then. So yeah, ended up
Fuck,
sent to
okay.
Dublin with like the majority of people did get Dublin. I think we graduated
Okay.
about 210 people. A couple of people actually resigned before they even left Templemore over that fiasco because, undoubtedly
Yeah.
people have lives, they had kids, they had wives, they had houses, and it just wasn't feasible for them to move to the likes of Dublin or even further afield.
Yeah.
Um,
See how the 200 joined with you, or that finished. How many people did you start with? Out of the 200 that finished.
we lost a couple through various reasons, people failing fitness tests, some people it wasn't for them.
Right.
There's the whole people getting back squatted for injuries, that kind of thing. It wasn't actually that much. But yeah, I mean, at the end of it, people a lot back then, like they were just there was so many people coming through. Like it was like, oh, the guards are
Yeah.
recruiting, get in, now's the time. I think at the time they were doing like 4 phases a year with about 200 people, so they about 800 a year coming out for
So,
a couple of years back then. But there was people that went out on day one in the job and resigned because it's like Templemore is nothing like the job out there. They can tell
yeah.
you how it is and share their own experiences and drill the legislation and procedures and policies into you. But when you actually get out there and you're dealing with real life stuff, it's totally different. And
Yeah.
some of the things, the sites you see, nothing can prepare you for that. Like
Yeah.
like, granted, you can watch stuff online and try and desensitize yourself or whatever, but when you see it in real flesh and blood in front of you, things happening, it's
Yeah.
very small
It's
and
very
nothing
different.
for.
Yeah. And just going to swing them right back, right, to when you met with the superintendent, your local superintendent. What did you do your fitness test then, and then you were straight in, or how long did it take to get in from meeting with the superintendent?
So you did the superintendent, you would have had your interview. So provided you passed all that, you did your medical because they can't send you to the fitness test unless you're medically fit to do it. So
Okay.
you took up to Phoenix Park, they have their doctor assess you there. Once you get the all clear, then you're waiting on a fitness test. Then the fitness test, you are down to Templemore. Back when I did it, then it was a beep test, push-ups and sit-ups. Then they gave you a break. Then you did like a push-pull machine test, and then an obstacle course. And provided
Okay.
you passed all that, then you were just waiting on your vetting to be done, your background checks and whatnot, and your references. And then once that all passed, you were given an offer and a start date in Templemore, basically.
Okay. And is the fitness test like strenuous? Like I've done the army one. I think it's 2.5K in like 11 minutes. I think that's what it was, or 11 and a
Uh,
half minutes. Is it
I mean,
similar? Or?
generally speaking, there was no runs like that when I joined.
Okay.
It was just a certain level on a beep test and push-ups and sit-ups. For someone who has a basic level of fitness, it's very much achievable. For someone who has no fitness, they're going to absolutely struggle because they just won't have the strength for the push-ups, the sit-ups, the runs. Obviously, right now, as you would have seen, the Garda fitness test has completely changed and
Yeah.
it is a walk in the park. But I went for the Irish Navy when I was going for the Royal Marines as well. So I did that 2.5K run in like 11 and a half minutes or something. So that was a bit more strenuous because you actually had to move fairly quick in that
Yeah.
time period. And that's kind of similar testing I would have done for the Royal Marines as well. But you think like law enforcement, it's obviously not as strenuous in aspects, depending on obviously what military you serve and if you get deployed abroad in war zones and stuff, it's all very different. But
Yeah.
law enforcement, you are dealing with really high stressful situations day in, day out. You could potentially have to run after people, restrain people. Like fitness is an absolute must, and it should be a routine requirement to actually test them regularly, not
Yeah.
just in your training or before you graduate and then that's it. Because it's not just about being able to run after someone, it's about being able to handle the stress of the job, being able to handle the stresses of life outside the job, because the job is one stress that can keep people up at night, but they might have other circumstances going on in the background and financial worries and all these other things at play. And if you're not fit, you can't handle the stress. You can't handle the stress. You look for coping mechanisms. For people, that could be alcohol, it could be binge eating, it could be gambling. There's a whole plethora of things that can go wrong when you don't have the fitness
Yeah.
required to handle the stresses that come with the job.
And do you know once you're in training, right, in Templemore, is there like daily kind of PT sessions that could potentially bring people up to a certain fitness level, or is it very individual based?
They had like physical activity classes in the schedule. I think it was like once a week. They blocked it off like 2 hours maybe. They did like runs around the square. So there was an element of fitness testing, not fitness testing, fitness training, because they had fitness testing as part. So they had to put the time and effort into actually giving people physical education down there. However, it was already kind of a thing that you kind of had to do it a bit yourself, because the classes were great and everything, but you had to still make the pass mark on the day when I came. And when I was going through, they did it at, I think, the midway point before you graduated, and then you did one during your probation as well.
Okay, so there is a fitness test while you're in training, 2 fitness tests basically. Okay.
Back then, but I've been told that right now that the only fitness test in the guards is the one to get in, and after that, there's no more fitness, which is crazy altogether.
Yeah. And you live in when you're in Templemore, right? So is there like a gym that you can access in the evening? Like does training stop at a certain time in the day that you go and train then, or how does it
So
work?
yeah, you have access to the gym. It's a pretty good gym up there, fully equipped. They have a swimming pool as well that you had use of. And then locally there was an athletics track if you wanted to go running on that. So you have all the facilities available to you. I mean, it's quite decent. I used to train in the evenings up there after classes. Most of the people actually did as well. They went in and just did something, whether it was going for a run, going for a swim, going to the gym. So people were pretty proactive about it. And of course, you're given breakfast, lunch, and dinner in Templemore as well. A lot of people talk about the food in Templemore and say, "Oh, it's terrible," and you're eating out all the time. And to be honest, it's different flavors for different people. I thought it was all right. Breakfast up there, porridge, hard-boiled eggs. Your lunch was like a roast, or something like a lasagna and whatnot. And then the evenings, it was like a mix and match. You could have gotten leftovers from the day before, or you might have like gotten something like, you know, steak and onion pies, for example, mixed with salads, or cold meats to make up wraps and stuff. So evening was a bit mixed, but I just made it work. A lot of people in the evenings, they would eat out locally in the town, or they go to Aldi's or somewhere like that and just get a few bits and pieces they'd make up in a microwave and whatnot.
And do you have to live in like Monday to Friday, or do you get to go home in the evenings if you want?
Some people that were there, like I think there was one or two lads live locally. They would have nipped home, but you were kind of mandated to either live in, and if you weren't living in, if you're in digs, you were expected to be staying there at night. If you didn't stay there, you did like request an exception to, stay at home, for example, or if you wanted to go home for a night during the week or whatever, you had to request that from the staff at the college, basically, because they were still accountable for you, even if you weren't staying on the grounds. So the landlady or landlord, whoever you were in digs with, were told, like, look, they're going to be staying with you Monday to Friday, and if they're not there, you kind of have to let us know because we're still responsible for them.
Yeah, fair enough. And once you passed out then and you got through the training side of it, you were sent up to Dublin. Did you get to specialise during you were just there for over 5 years, was it?
Yes, like that just opportunity didn't come up for me. How it works in the job is like, because people have asked me like, oh, I'd love to join the guards and go into traffic or drugs, whatever. You have like local drugs unit, detectives unit, and essentially everyone starts on the regular uniform, going to all the 999 calls. That's your bread and butter. You're dealing with thefts and assaults and traffic accidents and mix of everything, really. And that's where you learn your trade essentially, and how to deal with the public and investigate and all those other skills that policing has. And then throughout the year, like, positions and units will come up, but you have to finish your probation. So the probation was 2 years from when you come out of Templemore. So in that time, you're kind of stuck on the regular. After the 2 years, if anything comes up you want to apply for, Bob's your uncle, give it your best shot. And it's like just the same kind of internal procedure like in any other job, like an interview process. There might be a fitness testing, and it goes through all those different stages. But things like the local drugs unit and detective unit, you can kind of go up what they call as it's called like a nickname, a booksheet, where it's kind of like you're not officially there, but it's kind of like, how would you call it, like a little stint you can do up there for a couple of months.
Okay.
Generally they kind of headhunt people for that, or it's kind of who
Yeah.
because I saw some pretty good operators didn't get those opportunities, and other
Okay.
people got opportunities that weren't as good in the job. But I'll say no more on that. But it's definitely a who still.
Yeah.
So,
That's
no, I
that's
didn't get.
Ireland as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, that was it. And I was just on the regular for all those years in Dublin. And yeah, I would have loved to have gone for the armed support unit. That interested me, or the canine unit. But they just didn't come up. When the armed support came up, I was still in probation, so I wasn't eligible to apply. And then it didn't come out any time thereafter because they were still using the people that applied from when I was in probation to bring them through the whole process. So, like, what you would found is happen is that they'll have positions pop up and tons of people will apply for it, and they'll have them like a pool of applicants, and they might have 20 or 30 positions to fill. So they'll call people in order of merit, and as those positions are filled, it'll obviously take people out of the pool. Some people will get a phone call saying, "Hey, you're next in order merit. Do you want to give us a go?" They'll say yes or no, and just keep going down. So they might not like recruit until a couple of years later again for that same unit.
Okay.
So people have asked me all these things about getting in units, and I'm like, look, don't get your hopes up, because when you go in, chances are you'll be on the regular unit for many years to come.
Yeah, I think I was talking to someone before, and they said like you have to do kind of minimum 5 years on the regular before you kind of get the opportunities to kind of dip in and out of different units. Would
There's
that be
no
kind of accurate, or?
there's no like set years in terms of what you need to have. You just need to have your probation done, which is a 2-year period. And like I said, after that, something comes up, you can apply. But again, they're probably going to look, right, if you have two applicants, one has 10 to 15 years experience, the other has 3 years experience. The person who has that 10 to 15 years is likely going to perform better in the interview because they have more experience of the job and incidents and investigations, and be able to portray themselves as a lot more experienced than the other person. But there is probably elements of fairness, and I didn't go through any of those processes, so I wouldn't know the ins and outs. But that's the general way, is that if something comes up, you want it, you can apply for it. No one's gonna say you can't apply just as long as you're out of probation.
And so after the 5 years, you decided to leave, right? What was the main driving factor for leaving? Like, did you already have Australia kind of lined up in the
No,
scope,
so
or?
I was as I was saying to you, like there was a point in the job where I was kind of like, I don't know, I was policing something I want to do long term. I don't see myself, definitely didn't see myself in Dublin long term. I wanted to kind of get back home because I just had no family, no like roots in Dublin, and even trying to buy a house or property anywhere in or near Dublin on a Garda salary is non-existent really, unless you've got some wealth, family wealth, or your partner's got some wealth or a good
Yeah,
job. Because like it's just not realistic in Dublin, the house prices and the housing crisis. So I was like, right, I'm not just going to live the rest of my days in Dublin renting in a room. The aspiration was, if I'm staying in the Guards, get back home. So I was kind of like, right, I had like as soon as my probation was up, I put my transfer request in because I knew
okay,
it was in waiting rooms anyway. Because the general consensus is you be waiting at least 5-6 years before someone will even consider you for a transfer.
yeah,
And at that, people who have kids or some kind of grounds, they'll get more of a preference over you, and it's going to determine on, is there people coming out of Templemore that can fill your position, or someone that you can swap with from a different station. So I was kind of like sitting back going, right, like I could just be stuck here for days on end or years on end, and with no kind of pathway and idea where I'd be going. So I tried to go back into the private sector, was hunting for corporate jobs for a while, reaching out to like past college connections and that kind of thing. And one girl, she put me in touch with her HR department. I did an interview with them, and like out of all the places I sent applications into all the big companies. I even applied to graduate roles. I was getting like no's left, right, and center. And I was
yeah,
like, right, this is a sign that my degree is probably obsolete and my skill set. I'm out of the private sector too long. So obviously I'd have to consider going doing a master's or something else. So I looked at masters in UCC in like data analytics and that kind of thing, another kind of stepping stone from VIS,
okay,
and met with some college lecturers and looked into that. So it's kind of pondering it, like, do I take a chance, take a leap, and just go back to college for a year or two and do a master's? And I said no, I'll just park it, and just see how things play out a bit more. And ended up going from the regular into the control room in Dublin, because there was a control room in Cork. So I was like, right, this might be a different angle for me to get closer to home.
yeah,
Into the control room, it was easy going, a bit mundane, but 4 days on, 4 days off, easy pay, no stress. And I was happy just to cruise at that and try and figure out a different pathway. And I remember going in one day and there was a lad in there and he was like, "Oh, did you see the Aussie police are recruiting? They haven't recruited in years." And I was like, "What? The Aussie police are recruiting? What's this?" And years ago, when I'd done door security, a lad, I'd met him on a night out, and he was a guard for years, and he'd actually made the move over. And I was chatting to him, and I was like, "Wow, this is pretty interesting." And there was a TV show years ago, Garda Down Under, and I'd watched that, and I was like, "Oh,
That's right.
this looks great." Like, and even before the guards, I looked at moving to Australia a couple of times. The first time was when like I had buddies going over out of college, and I was like, "Nah, look, I'll just do my corporate job." And then after the corporate job, I had another friend moving over, but I applied for the guards, so I didn't move that. So then this was like third time lucky. I was like, this could be an opportunity for me to go and just try somewhere different and see how things go. So yeah, I just straight away the day the recruitment opened in Australia, I was straight in with the application and didn't waste any time. It just kind of went from there, really.
Yeah. Did you get to, were you able to apply in Ireland and interview in Ireland, or did you have to travel to Australia?
No, it was all done over Teams. Everything was
Okay.
remote. Similar enough process. Online application, aptitude testing, interview, medical, background checks, references. Then you, provided you got all that passed, they gave you like a conditional job offer, because then you had to do your visa application separately.
Okay.
And provided you got everything done with the visa and you were kind of kosher with that, then they gave you a formal offer.
Okay. And is the visa process, right? Is that, did they help you with the visa, or is that just done off your own back? And is there
No,
a cost involved?
everything's off your own back. The visa cost was a couple of grand. They did that was one thing they did do, is they reimbursed my visa fees. But everything else, moving costs, all of that was off my own back. But yeah, everything was done remotely, so it was pretty good. They came over. They sent like their recruitment team over. They visited the UK and they visited Dublin, just having like an open day. I didn't make it to the open day. I had friends that went to it. But I kind of had an idea. Like, I was pretty much through the whole process by the time they actually got over. So I
Yeah.
knew it was something I was interested in and wanted to do.
And so it's probably reassuring though, knowing that like you're leaving Ireland to walk straight into a job in Australia. Or was that the kind of pull factor that kind of made it a bit easier to make the move, or were you still
Well,
going anyway?
kind of like that, because it was like, right, if I don't have a job offer, like the only other avenue was going over on the working holiday visa. And I mean, at my age, I was like, right, I'm not going working on a fruit picking farm for 3 months and just
Yeah.
hoping. I mean, my partner and I, we had looked a year before I'd actually applied at going over on a skilled worker visa, and
Okay.
I was a couple of months short on tech experience. She had the experience from corporate, but we couldn't find a clear answer if I could go over on her visa. There was no clarity. We rang up immigration in Australia to try and clarify it, and no one kind of tell us black and white, yeah, if she applies, you can go on her visa. So we parked the idea, and of
Right.
course, Western Australia police recruitment. So I was like, right, this is a once in a lifetime possible opportunity. And I was like, if I don't do it, I'll always look back and go, what if, and have that regret of not trying it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose knowing that when you land, you're going to have a job and an income, and you can continue policing, because at the core of it, I do enjoy policing. I like going out. Every day is different. Obviously, helping people in need, combating crime and whatnot. It sounds cheesy, but when you're in policing and people who enjoy the job, that's what you like. And I just said, right, the guards, I just wasn't really fully happy where I was. So this was something else I could do. And obviously a nice country, good climate, good lifestyle, always appealed to me. A family over on the East Coast and friends there as well. So I was like,
Okay.
why not? I've nothing to lose here. Just go for it.
Made sense. And when you landed then, right, were you straight out on the beat, like into like a regular job, or did you have to kind of go through a training process like what you went through in Temple Moore?
Yes, they have like a transitional course. It's 13 weeks long. So it's not as lengthy as Templemore, because we're all experienced. We have the policing experience and skill set. So
Yeah.
it's more just a conversion course, essentially, to cover off their legislation, their procedures, their way of doing things. And of course, over here, we're armed. We carry a firearm and a taser. So you have to do training for that. And then they have driving training. So learning how to, drive the way they do. And they're very strict on the speed limits. And of course, they've all their tech and different apps and different ways of working, essentially. So you cover all that in like fairly condensed and 13 weeks, and after that you graduate and you're into the job, and it's kind of like, yeah, like they'll kind of show you a bit of how it's done. They're not expecting you to be a whiz kid from the get go, but they're like,
Okay.
you're the experienced person coming over, and they're looking on you to kind of showcase your experience in terms of
Yeah.
dealing with people and communication skills and whatnot, especially for the probationers over here who are like in Templemore, coming straight out, no street experience, and they're
Yeah.
fresh out of the box essentially, and you're kind of a bit of a guidance for them and showing them how it's done in terms of dealing with people and that kind of thing.
Okay. And having the firearm now and being armed like in Australia, did you find that sort of the training a bit different or kind of hard to grasp? Were you get good at the shooting or were you kind of okay?
When I lived in America, I did a couple of gun courses. Like
Okay.
it's just since I was a kid, it's like, oh, guns are cool. And when I went to America, I was like, there's guns everywhere, like
Yeah.
fire gun ranges everywhere. Everyone carries firearms. It's just crazy how much firearm access there is in America. So when I was there, I was like,
Right.
God, I'll just keep going the gun range. And yeah, so I shot a couple of times, did a couple of courses. So that was obviously years ago for getting over here. So I had like the familiarity of like holding a firearm and shooting it. But
Okay.
like the Aussies are very good. They're very by the book. Training is really, really good quality. They'll teach you from the ground up. Even if you've no experience, they'll help you. There's plenty of practice and everything. So I didn't have any issues. A few people struggled with firearms, people who had never shot guns before, very nervous, like the sweat will be pouring out of you because you're like shaking one first time, like so.
It'll be nerve-wracking. And like, was there many Irish people that like joined with you, or was it on your kind of 13-week conversion, or were you kind of on your own, or was there
Um,
different guys from other police forces with you?
in my course, I was the only Irish person. There's a
Okay.
ton of people coming from the UK.
Right.
A very small subset of Irish going through the courses over here. It's mainly people coming from the UK. A few people come from New Zealand. So the Irish contingency actually going over here is quite small. People have reached out to me from back home asking a lot about it. Of course, I think it's just Irish mindset, very much home roots, and people don't want to leave and go too
Yeah.
far afield with such a commitment. So people are like, when I was applying and leaving, they're like, "Oh, I'd love to do that," and I was like, "Well, why don't you so? Just do it. Like, what have you got to lose? Like, life is for making the most of opportunities that come your way. Like, if you don't like it, you can always come back home." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, but it's very far away," and I'm like, okay, well then, like, either
Stay
take
put.
it, stay at home, and just keep trucking along as you are, or go and experience something different. Well, I was on the latter. I was like, I'm going to experience something different and see how things go.
And I don't think the guards do now have like and like if they opened up I suppose, an application process where like guys that were in the guards moved to Australia wanted to move back to Ireland, would you come back to the guards or are you happy to stay put?
I'm happy enough. I mean, the lifestyle outside of the job aspect, the lifestyle is fantastic. Um,
Okay.
Quality of life, like the first thing I noticed when I came here is just it's just spotlessly clean everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you don't really see that anywhere else, like that I've been in the world anyway, apart from Dubai. Dubai was spotless, but coming over here, like a bit of an American vibe to it in terms of layouts and things. But yeah, like every day pretty much here is blue skies. At the moment, it's March and it's 38 degrees, which is quite hot. During the summer,
Jeez.
like over Christmas, it was up in the 40s. So it's funny, people look up and they see all this good weather, but it's like too hot to go out in it sometimes and
Yeah.
just needs air conditioning. So it's like a catch-22. You've just fantastic weather, blue skies, but it's sweltering hot. But
Yeah.
the majority of the time, it's like manageable, high 20s, early 30s, and yeah, like people coming over, they're like, Perth, Jesus, like where's Perth? And they're looking because when people think about Australia, all they hear about is Sydney and
Mm.
Queensland and Brisbane and Melbourne, and like no one ever thinks to look at Western Australia because at the end of the day, it's very isolated. Perth is the most isolated city in the world, and no one really considers it. But I would say, like, I went over east when I arrived to visit my sister and went
Yeah.
up to Brisbane and stuff just to see what it was all like. And comparatively, I like much prefer Perth. It's very laid back, very easy going, much more affordable. Has the best beaches I've ever seen, like
Right.
granular white sand, blue water, like the best weather. And every time I look on the weather app, I always look over east and it's always like cloud or rain. And over here it's just sun, 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 sun,
Sun.
sun, blue skies every day,
Jeez.
every week.
And did you have a choice? Like, did you have to go to Perth, or could you have went to Sydney, or did you get to choose, or
So
did you just pick Western Australia?
Western Australia Police were the first police force to recruit, and
Okay.
about 2 or 3 months after they opened, Queensland Police started recruiting as well. So I put an application in for that just as kind of a backup, but I didn't really have any ambition because all the ex-guards I'd spoken to were from the Western Australia Police, and they really sold it to me. And they were still in the job when I spoke to them. So I was like, right, they're in the job years. There's something obviously good about it. And then like Queensland, they did have like a pretty good relocation package. It was 20 grand relocation. And if you had a degree, you could go in like a faster tracked program as a transitional officer. The only drawback, of course, was that you didn't have a guarantee of being in a city. They could have put you in the outback somewhere in Queensland, and you had like tropical humid climate. And I just kind of factored all that in, and I said, no, like I'm pretty okay with Perth. Don't know anyone there apart from a couple of ex-guards, but it's been pretty well sold to me at this point, so I'll just crack on with it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the South Australian police, they recruited back a few months ago. I remember seeing something on the Garda Insta that the South Australian police had a big van outside one of the stations in Limerick, like, this is the sunshine lifestyle, come and join us.
They are actively like recruiting in Dublin. Like, we work with an ex-guard from out of the blue training. It's for like
Mm.
blue light services and defence forces guys that are transitioning from military or Garda service to civilian life. And the Western Australian, or yeah, the Australian police always have like leaflets at those expos.
Yeah.
So they are actively like poaching or trying to
Yeah.
anyway.
Over here, it's the public sector in general, for nurses, for doctors, for teachers. Like, they get really good relocation packages. Granted, they're probably in a bit more outback locations in Western Australia, but it's a stepping stone, because people like that in those jobs, they come out here. That's where they might start off, but there's a whole wealth of opportunity. And the biggest ticket is you get permanent residency. So people come to Australia and work on holiday visas and try so hard to stay and get sponsored and all this kind of thing, in years doing it. And it was quite lucky to be given permanent residency without actually having stepped foot in the country. And that was a
Yeah.
really good like selling point. And if you've a partner or family members or kids, they can all go on it as well, and they'll all get permanent residency. So my fiance, like, she came out, hadn't to do anything. She just had her name on my application, got permanent residency as well. So
Awesome.
it's a fantastic opportunity, really.
It's brilliant. And the promotional aspects, like, is there more like opportunity for promotion and kind of do different courses and specialize out there, or is it pretty much the same as the guards? Like, it's kind of sit and kind of wait and see what comes up.
In terms of promotion, it's similar in ways. Like, you do an exam, you do an interview, they'll assess you, and then it's kind of like you're putting a pool of candidates and they draw from the pool. So it's very similar in that way. I think, same ranking structure of sergeants, inspectors, superintendents, and up higher than that. So very similar organizational structure, but the opportunity out here is just tenfold from what the guards is. Because one I think it's a good aspect. Some people argue otherwise, but there's a 10-year policy out here. So when we started out here, you're kind of given, right, where you're stationed. You have to do 2 years there. After your 2 years is up, you can go onto the vacancy list, which is out every week, and you can pick another station or a specialist unit, and you just apply for it. If you're going to another station, it might be a bit more informal. Just have a discussion with the acting sergeant of the station, and just have a chit chat about why you want to go there and that kind of thing. If it's a specialist unit, it's a bit more formal. An interview process might be fitness testing, but the opportunity is there. Every time I look on the vacancy list, the specialist units, there's stations all over Perth Metro and regional, because you can go to regional parts of Western Australia, where there's a massive incentive in terms of financial gain from going to those locations.
Right.
And like, even locally, like, getting courses in the station is way more plentiful. Like, what I do like about the Australian police is they're so proactive in upskilling you and keeping you current and making sure that you have the opportunity. It's very fair. It's very equal. It's not like in the guards. Like, in the guards, like, back when I did it anyway, there was no driving qualifications. So you came out and you couldn't even drive a patrol car because you didn't have a driving qualification in the job. Whereas now I know that they're doing the basic level in Templemore, which just allows you to drive the jobs without the lights and sirens. But to get the like lights and sirens qualification, the guards, you could wait years. and it goes in order of priority on the unit. So whoever's been on the unit the longest is going to get first dibs. So if you're the junior man, you'd be waiting years for any kind of a course, really, because it always goes top down priority. There's no kind of fairness in that regard. Whereas over here, it's very much anyone's game for it. If something comes up, you want to do like a land search and rescue course or a marine search and rescue course, you just pop your name, or you let your sergeant know this is what I'm interested in, this is what I do, and they'll give you full support, full backing for it. So that's what I love about here. It's just that opportunity after your 2 years is up, you can go to a different station, you can stay where you are, you can apply for units, you're getting that support locally to do other courses and qualifications. To there's obviously funding to do external qualifications if you want to do degrees and stuff. Yeah, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. And have you specialised yet, or have you got the opportunity to do any kind of particular courses?
No, because I'll have to do my 2 years before I can go to a unit. Some units advertise and they have like no restrictions on your tenure. So if you're less than 2 years in the location, you can still apply. Like for example, there's a domestic violence unit, there's a sexual assault unit. Some of them you have to be detective qualified, and to be detective over here you need citizenship. So that's 4 years for a lot of people that come over, because it's 4 years from entering that we can get citizenship. So there's a couple of doors are closed in that regard, or you need like a certain vetting level for security clearance. Again, you need citizenship for that. So while there's plenty of opportunity, it's a bit limited in that sense until you have your citizenship, but there's still loads of opportunity in terms of doing courses and stuff. Yeah, it's really good in that regard.
That's brilliant. It sounds like it's not a bad opportunity.
I'm a good advocate for the job to anyone back home. I'm convinced one chap that I'm friends with still, he was on to me and I was like, I just sold him it. Just told him, like, sent tons of WhatsApp voice notes and messages, told him why the job is good, lifestyle, and he sold. His application sent in. I know there's a couple of people on to me back along who are starting applications and stuff. I haven't heard from them. I'm just surprised that the way things are at the moment, not just in the Guards, but in Ireland in general, that there's not more people coming out to the likes of Australia for these like golden ticket opportunities, is what I would say, because like the Western Australia Police hadn't recruited since I think back in 2010, 2011 maybe. Okay. And if people are sitting on the fence, I would be telling them apply yesterday, because it's not going to stay there forever. And you don't want to look back in years to come and say, oh, I wish I'd applied and seen what it was like, because I couldn't live with that kind of regret or wondering what if. Just give it a shot. There's been people that have come out, they've given it a go, and they've gone back to Ireland for various reasons. Okay. There has been one lad, he went back and he's rejoined the Guards since. So it's not like you can't go back and rejoin. The Guards might not be so quick to let you back in if you've left the police force.
Call you a traitor.
Yeah, there's ways of getting back in. You might just have to wait a while. But look, people make sacrifices. A lot of people from the UK, they sold houses, they took full families of kids with them. It's possible for anyone. So if people are thinking like, oh, I have a wife and kids, I have a house, it's a big move. People have done it and they've been totally fine. The support here is massive from the organization and from people outside the job. They just want you to have the best start you can out here and want you to enjoy it, and they want you to stay, because they're trying to obviously boost their numbers here as well. They have, every police force in the world has recruitment and retention issues. Some are more extreme than others, but they want people coming over with the experience and adding value to the job and to the people that are in it.
Yeah. Why do you think people like are shy away from like a career in the Guards or a career in the police force? Like, what do you think are the factors there?
There's a number of factors, I think. I think when people look, everyone has different reasons. Some people are driven by remuneration and salaries and perks and benefits. Other people just want something different. They don't like the stagnant office lifestyle. And for some people like me, it was like a kind of a childhood aspiration. But I think right now, a lot of people, like the Guards and the Defence Forces too, they don't get the best limelight in the news and media. And that has an impact. And of course, you look on the likes of TikTok, and phones are being whipped out at incidents, and things are being recorded, and it's only portraying part of what's happened, because people will only show a part of an incident that's going to cast it as negatively as possible. It's going to show some lad being handcuffed and dragged away. It's not going to show him probably punching the guard, for example, or kicking someone, it's not going to show that. It's going to show the worst parts. That has an impact. People are like, oh, there's a lot of bad limelight, a lot of negativity. Maybe that's why. Pay is okay. You're not going to be rich. You're not going to be poor. You'll be comfortable. But what I would say is trying to live on a Garda salary in Dublin, it's challenging, especially if you want to buy property, or you're trying to support a wife and kids, for example. It's a lot more challenging. So the pay could be better, the pension could be better. The pension isn't great now. And it's just I think every public sector job comparatively to the private sector, you're never going to do better perks and remuneration wise. Like I said, when I was in corporate, health insurance was paid for. You had social occasions that were paid for. There's nothing like that in the guards.
Yeah, it's similar enough in the defence forces.
I just think there's just a general consensus that many years ago, the guards was like an honourable job and it was highly sought after. Someone said to me that, back decades ago, if you got the guards, you were like, "Wow, this guy is the real deal. Like he's gonna make it. He's going to the guards." Like,
yeah, it's like a job for life.
Yeah, like 200 applicants applying for 10 positions, kind of thing. Whereas now, it's like, oh, joining the guards, you're like, people looking going, oh, he's a guard, like, be wide, like, be wary of him. When you join the guards, like, and some people, when they ask me, like, oh, I'm taking to the guards, I kind of ask them, well, what are you doing now? Like, what's your background? What are you working at? Like, if someone has nothing else on the table, I would say, right, go for it, because it's a solid job, permanent employment, pay is fine. It's different every day. But if someone's coming saying, oh, I've this like really good corporate job, good pay package, like comfortable, so something I want to kind of give a go, I'd be kind of like, well, maybe think about it before you make the jump. Just make sure it's for you.
The salary now, right, where you are, compared to like the cost of living in Perth, is it like reasonable? Is it a good kind of package that you have out there? You can not say what it is, but
in terms, like, if you look at the euro conversion to the Australian dollar, it's quite comparative, but the pay just goes so much further over here. When we moved over first, she didn't have a job for months, and we were living on my salary quite comfortably, paying rent, paying bills, still having a bit of a social outing, and still saving a bit. So it's really good in that aspect. And it's very affordable cost of living in Perth compared to other parts of Australia. We have a 3-bed house in Perth, and we're paying less than what you would probably in a room share in Dublin for a month. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. I heard people paying $2,000 for a double room in Dublin City, and I'm like, that is crazy money.
Jesus, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but the rent in Dublin at the moment is absolutely criminal. Like, it's ridiculous.
I just don't know how some people are paying rent like that crazy. Like the average rent over here for like a two bedroom, 1 bathroom apartment, for example, it could be $650 a week for something fairly decent. You can pay obviously a bit less, and you will get standard comparable. We kind of got lucky because we got it through connections in the job, and our landlady lives next door, so we got very lucky in that sense. But generally speaking, people that come over here get fairly decent accommodation. They're living quite comfortable. I know a lot of people come over with wives and kids. The wives end up just staying home looking after the kids. But there's very good childcare subsidies over here. You have to be there a couple of years. It's not like you might not expect to get handouts and child benefit when you land, because you have to be in the country. It's means tested. You have to be here for a couple of years. But in saying that, full-time police salary is more than enough over here to support the family and pay the bills and the rent.
That's good. And your other business, is it a business that you have, or is it more of a side hustle kind of thing? The coaching and fitness?
Yeah, fitness coaching. Back when I was in guards, throughout the years, always going to the gym, always had an interest in fitness and health. So I was always kind of like, right, I should just do a PT qualification, and at least as a start, and see where I can go from there. So I booked a load of leave when I was in the guards and just doing the course on the weekends up in Dublin, got my PT qualification. And then I went on and did an online nutrition qualification through a company in the UK. So I had like the backbone of it. And then I was just training family and friends just to get experience, get like transformations, learning all the ropes myself, like a one-man army, figuring out content, email marketing, website page, landing pages, all these things. Then went traveling and took about a year away from doing anything really. And I suppose I should have kept it going. Then I came over here, just settled in, and just kind of starting back into it now, and just getting content out and looking open doors for clients really, just to help more people. And like a lot of people have reached out to me on TikTok and Instagram, and like preparing for the Garda fitness test and stuff, and looking for advice on that. And in general, people just reach out every now and then saying, "Can you help me? Like I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z."
Yeah,
So
and
I don't know if I'll ever, like, it is very time consuming. Especially when do it with personal life and a policing job. So it's definitely something just on the side that I just like helping people, because I've been a skinny kid, I've been overweight, I've been athletic, and had all those different pains and struggles of each of those physiques, and the insecurities that come with it. And I know how people feel when they're in those kinds of positions and they don't feel comfortable taking their top off and they go on holidays, or the shirt that they want to wear on a night out just doesn't fit right. And there's this whole like social aspect to it, and trying to look for a partner, or improve their own relationships and stuff. And it all boils down to like their health and fitness, and if they can feel better about themselves and look better and feel better. And that's kind of where I've come from, is like I've been in those positions and felt those feelings, and I know what it's like when you don't know what to train, you've no structure, you don't know what to eat, and you're second guessing everything, and you just need someone to give you kind of guidance on it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And is it all like online coaching that you do, or you do it in person, or over Teams, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's all online, so I can coach anyone anywhere in the world. Just trying to do it in person, it's just difficult. Gyms they can charge you crazy enough rents, and just trying to put the time commitment. You're trading time for money, whereas doing it online, it's in your own time, it's flexible schedule. You work for yourself, and that's a nice aspect to it.
Okay. And if someone wants to find you or get in touch with you for like the fitness coaching side of things, where can they find you?
Just David OD Coaching, across all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, a bit of Twitter and YouTube, not to the same extent as Facebook.
Okay.
Instagram and TikTok, or davidodcoaching.com. They can just reach out to me. If they have any questions, even just for a simple guidance. I'm not just going to straight up poach them and say, "Hey, Johnny, my client, this is my package." I'm more than happy to give people a few pointers, a bit of guidance. Obviously, with some regard, obviously, I'm not going to be telling them, "Right, here's your training plan, and here's your nutrition," and I'm not going to be looking for you to be a client, because that's just not how it works in this day and age. And but yeah, people, if they want to, like, especially with the job or fitness testing or just health and fitness in general, yeah, I'm all ears for it. I'll happy enough to give people guidance and help them out.
Yeah, cool. All right, thanks very much for coming on, David. Much appreciated.
No worries, Connor. Thanks for having me.
All right,
Hope
I'm gonna.
these people who are listening or watching a pretty good insight, obviously, into the job and life and Australia life and the prospects they can give and opportunities there. People want it.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely sounds like a great opportunity if someone's interested.
Yeah, and just, if anyone would say that they're on the fence, I would just say go for it, because life, like I said, is for living. Take opportunities. Don't live with regrets. Just go for it. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back. Same for the job in regards. If you've been thinking about it, and if it was like me and it was an itch you couldn't scratch, you're going to have to scratch it by doing it. Just go for it. You can always fall back to what you did before or do something else. There's always, where there's a will, there's a way. Mind over matter. Just put your head down and just give your best shot.
Yeah, perfect.